Down said, huh? It's a football podcast with Tom, Cody, and Sam. Welcome to the Midwest Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm here today, Tom Brumbaugh, with Cody Holla and our esteemed guest, the infamous but also famous at the same time, Matt Trujillo.
Hello.
How's it going?
Not too bad. I'm excited to join you guys. You know, it's an honor. Long-time listener, first-time caller. So let's get to it.
Oh, I like that. I like the enthusiasm. And Cody, how you doing this week?
Doing good. Actually recording from home due to some work stuff. But I'm happy to be joining and happy to be showing off this little bad boy right here. For those of you that don't recognize this, because, well, nobody's ever owned it except for me, this is our fantasy football trophy that we have, you know, and if you look actually on the side right here, you can see not one, but 2 championships in a row. So thought I'd just bring this out and let all you guys see it so you guys just know what it looks like.
I think I'd see it better if it was shoved up your ass.
Well, that's weird that you're looking at my ass.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Well, with that, on that positive note, let's run down what we are doing for you guys this week with our new guest this week taking place of Sam Batland. So we're going to start off with going through our Week 7 fantasy football headlines. Then we're going to jump into our trades and pickups. We have one very crucial trade that happened this week. It actually involves 2 of the people that are on this podcast. Then we're going to jump through an interview with Matt Trujillo. But then we're going to do a matchup rundown. And then we're going to end with our power ranking update, which I actually have a few things I want to address with that power rankings because I think a lot of the matchups this week affected that. So with that, Cody, start us off with your Week 7 fantasy football headline.
Well, I think the biggest thing for me starting it off here was kind of, and hopefully I'm not stealing Trujillo's right here, but was, you know, talking about one of his players, was seeing what happened to OBJ this last week. You know, the torn ACL, the news of that coming out. And, you know, here's a guy that had scored 3 touchdowns just a couple weeks beforehand and had a pretty good week, I think, last week. And boom, he's already gone for the season. Another big injury, and it's a big question of will he ever come back from this fully healthy? So it'll be really interesting to see how the recovery process goes.
Yeah, Matt, are you concerned about that?
Yeah. You know, to be completely transparent with you and the listeners, been trying to shop OBJ for, you know, quite some time now. And then with this, it's just icing on the cake of how do I handle him? When I traded Cody for Odell, I honestly, after the trade, I was like, what did I just do? What was the whole point of this trade? And then now, you know, him out for the season, he's a complete question mark of what to do moving forward. So if anybody listening wants him, you could probably buy low for him right now. So complete question mark.
Yeah, I mean, age 27, this year just performing as wide receiver number 27, you know, a wide receiver that used to be in contention for number 1 every single year. And now with the ACL injury and year 28 coming for him next year, it's going to be interesting to see what his value is. I mean, would you say he drops down to wide receiver 3 in Dynasty, or is that just way too much of an overreaction?
It's OBJ. I would say that's an overreaction, but, you know, he's one of the players that you just can't trust. You keep hanging on to how he performed years ago, thinking that you're going to see those flashes come back or something's going to finally click. But it's just one of those things where every time I say that he's higher than a wide receiver 3, I feel like I'm just looking at his legacy and not who he is right now. So I would probably say wide receiver 3 is a fair assessment with the bursts of wide receiver 1 any given week. But yeah, I think you're spot on.
Cody, you agree?
You know, kind of agree with kind of just your overall first question, Tom, of whether it is an overreaction or not. I think now with the question marks, he may kind of fall into that category. I still think low wide receiver 2 to mid wide receiver 2. It'll be interesting to see. I don't think he stays with the Browns. I think after this injury, he goes to a different team. And to be completely honest, I think he needs to go to a different team right now. And maybe he does find a coach that rekindles, his offensive playmaking ability. I mean, we already see Le'Veon going to Kansas City. What if Odell got picked up and went to Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes? Like, there's so many outrageous things that could happen that could revitalize his career. And he still just does have the talent to put him up there. So it's really a coin toss at this point.
Yeah, the Browns system does not seem like the right system for him at all whatsoever. I mean, after 20 games at least with their system, he's not even close to a wide receiver 1. So I think that would be a positive change for his career. So Matt, what's your week 7 fantasy football headline?
I would say a blanket rookie fever. I mean, I feel like every week I'm just seeing more and more rookies emerge at this point that I'm just not used to seeing. Is it just specific to this class? Should we expect it moving forward with just how athletes are nowadays in college? But I swear more and more rookies are just stepping up to the point where I just want in on every rookie that I could find right now, because you're having people that were drafted in some undrafted, some drafted in our 3rd and 4th round that are emerging to be studs for their teams. So I feel like the rookie fever has just been growing more and more as this year has gone by, across the board, running backs, tight ends, wide receivers, just all over the place. So it's just been insane.
So who is your favorite rookie to watch this year?
Oh, gosh.
Off the top of your head.
I mean, just because I own him in a different league, I've been so impressed with T. Higgins. I've been watching those games. He's been somebody that's been kind of under the radar compared to the other rookies in the class, but he's just been looking so damn good in that offense. So he's been one that, I mean, just because I've been watching those games and really paying attention to him, he's really been impressing. What about you guys?
Yeah, Cody, who do you think it is a good question. Like, who's your favorite, not who's the best rookie, but who's your favorite rookie to watch?
It's actually interesting because I was going to say T. Higgins before he stole him from me, but I'm going to go a little bit out there on just kind of a different route. I'm going to go with Brandon Ayuk. I think watching his playmaking ability and watching how many different ways, he to me is actually kind of a replica of Deebo Samuel. And so to have like the two type of playmakers that can do end arounds, do short routes, do long routes, is really interesting, a really interesting dynamic to analyze. So, I mean, everybody talked about how Brandon Ayuk could do everything in college, and then to see that translate over into the NFL is honestly pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that's I mean, it'd be a shame if someone owned both of those receivers, but
but I think they're going to fall off. Just kidding.
That being said, I like watching them, but they suck. My favorite rookie to watch, I think, I'm a little biased, but DeAndre Swift is. Now they're finally giving him carries, and he actually does look solid. Like I think that was a great pick for the Lions, and I think that starting next year already, he's just going to be the clear 80% back, and hopefully Peterson's gone by then. I don't know what they'll do with Kerryon. They might even do some sort of free agent pickup again, because I don't know. I mean, I like Kerryon Johnson as a pass blocking running back, but that's about it. So DeAndre Swift is just elusive. He's got great hands, other than the fact that he drops game-winning touchdowns, and I would love to own him. I'm sad Adam has him.
Well,
so
give him a wide receiver.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Higgins for Swift.
There you go. That'll pair up Higgins and Burrow combination for him.
One of these times we'll do the trade doctor segment to try to actually figure out a good trade.
Yep.
Maybe next year. My week 7 fantasy football headline is really not that fantasy related, because we don't account for tackles anymore. But DK Metcalf's tackle, everyone's talking about that. But I was watching that game live, and I was just so giddy because I love DK Metcalf in every single way. And watching him just completely just burst down Budda Baker and just take him down with no effort at all. He just flicked him on his kneecaps and he just fell over. That was cool. I don't know. So yeah, I guess let's move on from the week 7 fantasy football headlines and actually get into the meat of the podcast. So I'm showing my screen right now. I'm looking at the league chat because there was a monumental, fantastic. One of the biggest trades of the year for sure was made between Cody Hall and Matt Trujillo, as the two are making facial gestures and trying to show their worth on the screen. And this is probably, I don't know if it's in the top 5, but it's definitely in the top 10 of most influential trades that we've ever made in our league. And just to quickly just say what I'm seeing on screen, so everyone's on the same page in case you're just listening and not watching. Cody actually picked up Saquon Barkley, the running back for the New York Giants, Tonyan, and Michael Pittman, wide receiver for Indianapolis Colts, in exchange for Matt Trujillo receiving Henry Ruggs, a 2022 first, a 2021 first, and a 2021 second round pick. So first off, I'm actually going to jump off to Matt Trujillo because I kind of want you to walk through your thought process of this trade. What were you trying to do? What was the point of the trade for you?
Yeah, so a few weeks ago, when I acquired Saquon, it was because I had the running back pieces in place to where, hey, I can get by with Saquon in my IR because I had Nick Chubb, I had Eckler. Then they go down that same week on the same day within minutes of each other. And then, I had to take a step back and say, okay, I gave up Kenyon Drake for Saquon Barkley, right? So I'm going to have to move Saquon because I'm going to either need picks or I'm going to need some pieces that I can plug in right now. Teams that reached out for Saquon let me know that they were not interested, or they didn't have him at a high enough value because of his injury. So really, Cody was the only one that was reaching out with something that was kind of making sense. But again, I had to look at the paperclip, trading up from a paperclip to a house. Look at it as I'm trading Kenyon Drake, because this was just a few weeks ago where it was Kenyon Drake in my lineup, not Saquon. So in our talks, getting the idea of getting picks was pretty interesting, because then I could flip those picks right away to somebody who would actually want them heading into this next draft class. Turns out nobody wants picks right now, because I think every single person in our league considers themselves outside shots at making the playoffs. So dumb move on my end. But at the same time, being able to get 2 firsts, an early second in Marcus, because fuck Marcus, that second round pick is going to be in the earlier third of that round, and then Henry Ruggs, which I think is an upgrade over Michael Pittman. At the time, it made a lot of sense, but then after I've been reaching out to people, Tom, you got rid of that offer within seconds, but reaching out, offering picks, again, I think people are just really, really hell-bent on making the playoffs, so they're looking for players instead of picks. So maybe it was a bad move on my end, but yeah, at the time I thought it was nice.
No, I don't think it was a bad move at all. And I do agree with your sentiment, which something we've talked about several times in the last couple of years we've been doing this podcast, is it's really cool that if everyone thinks they can make the playoffs, that has to mean something about the health of the league. So in general, that's something I always look forward to. But I'm going to turn it to you, Cody, because I'm kind of curious, do you have any A, specific feedback about what Trujillo just said, or B, any other thoughts that you had when you were trying to make this trade?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually first want to kind of address what Trio's talking about with the draft picks and the lack of the market. And it actually is super interesting, because this is a discussion we've constantly had kind of on here, which is trade. And this is actually probably something I did wrong right here, but I'm very okay with. So the result is there's the best time to trade draft picks is a month before the draft, because people get that rookie fever, they get that rookie craze. And that's when teams really want those draft picks. It's been, a lot of times during, the year, a lot of teams don't really have the bad teams don't have good assets to give away, because they've debatably already tried to give them away. So, this was kind of the weird circumstance where, Trujillo was trying to sell Saquon, and Saquon to me fits in really well with my team because he's not playing this year. And then Michael Pittman, kind of same thing. It's like good upside potential. I have Harris Campbell that I acquired from Mike Reed, so I always felt like, okay, I have the Colts wide receiver. The next one to take over T.Y. Hilton is going to be mine. So it felt like kind of a more accurate dart throw with the Colts wide receivers. And then for Saquon, I was just nervous about where in the draft I was going to be able to get my next big running back, just because a lot of my draft picks were projecting to be the number 1 overall, which I'm probably going to – I don't care. I'm probably going to take a quarterback. Why wouldn't I? And then the rest were going to be on the lower side of like the lower half of the first round. And I'm like, will a running back fall there? Like a good running back fall there that I really want? Because, I mean, there's Travis Etienne, but I don't know. So to me, it was I got the running back I really wanted. I was able to control my Colts wide receivers. And, some of the draft picks that we were able to kind of agree on was fine for me. I still have so many other draft picks that I can use because, you can't see it on the graphic here, but to just give you a bit of background knowledge, that 2022 first round is going to be Ben Fowler's, the top one. That 2021 first is actually Trujillo's own first round draft pick. So currently, I mean, projected like bottom 3, but anything can happen in playoffs to adjust that. And then like Matt had said before, that 2021 second below there actually belongs to Matt Magnuson. Or sorry, Marcus. Marcus Kaminsky. I almost gave him Matt Magnuson's second rounder on accident after we agreed to it. I'm so sorry.
It needed a few reworks, but we finally got there.
Yeah, I think we declined like 5 offers, and it was really not that far off. It was just kind of approaching that middle ground is all we needed to be. It was, I kind of want this asset, not this asset. And, overall, I think I think I potentially might have overpaid on what the market was for Saquon right now, but I don't really mind it. It still feels like it helps out both sides.
So initially I was going to try to continue this discussion by asking who you think won the trade, but you guys are way too effing humble because you both are like, oh, well, I think maybe I overpaid for this. And, oh, well, actually, I think I think I made a trade at the wrong time because I think Cody won. So I'm just going to give my 2 cents on this trade.
Go for it. Tell us who you think won or lost, or if we both lost.
Well, I actually think this is a very even market value trade. Like, I think if you break down just going into picks, which is, in my opinion, one of the easiest ways to evaluate a trade, I think Saquon Barkley is about 2.5 firsts, or 2 firsts and a high second is normally what that breaks down to be. And then like Michael Pittman is by definition like a mid first, or I guess I should say maybe mid second is probably more accurate for him. So really we're looking at 2 firsts and 2 seconds. And then I look at this screen and I'm seeing about 2 firsts and 2 seconds. So trade value wise, it's really similar in value. But my first thought initially was I was very surprised that you were trading Cody, that you were trading so many picks away as a team that was trying to rebuild. But once you explained your rationale that those picks needed to become a running back, and Saquon Barkley could just be that running back instead of being a pseudo draft pick in the sense that he's super young and has pretty high immediate value. With that being said, he does have some high risk as well. I think it's an even trade that at the moment, Matt, in theory, wins, right? Because he's a competing team that if something ever did happen to his wide receivers in the same way that he's been affected pretty negatively with the injury bug with running backs, he can actually put in Henry Ruggs as a solid wide receiver 3, or flex option. So I would just move the needle ever so slightly to Trujillo just because picks do have very good both present and future value, and Henry Ruggs can play right now.
Yeah, and especially with OBJ going down, I mean, Ruggs is going to be in my lineup sooner than I was expecting. But, I mean, like you were saying with the picks, the value right now is obviously at the lowest. But come draft time, if I'm going to flip those picks when people are having that rookie fever, could turn out that the trade in hindsight would be a little bit better than it is right now. But, this was about as even as you can get with the trade. So I was pretty surprised that I was able to find a trade partner that would offer up something that was pretty even rather than kind of underselling or me having to overpay or whatever.
Yeah. And I think for me, it was, I have the ability to like, obviously there is risk, involved, but he's only 23. I mean, he's super young still. And it's Saquon Barkley. Like, we've watched him. And I mean, it was only a couple of years ago. Everybody's like, this guy's the best fantasy asset it completely. And I don't think anybody would argue his talent is gone. at least not from watching him this past year. So to me, it was I have the opportunity to get, in my mind, what could be a top 3 player still for, I don't want to say this low of a package, but where he would have probably gone for like 3 first-round draft picks in value, maybe even a little bit higher if he's, the Saquon we all knew. So I agree with you, Tom, though. I think currently it is a little bit in Matt Trujillo's favor.
Yeah. Same breath, though, you still have so many first-round picks. I mean,
yeah.
Look at what Adam's been able to do with his team in one off season. So, I mean, the fact that you can acquire Saquon and still have the amount of picks that you're going to have for this draft, I could see you turning things around as quickly as he did. So I'm excited with your team, but don't get too cocky.
It is really funny that this is a divisional trade. That is an interesting part is, I normally I've actually noticed me and Matt actually have a lot of trade discussions, even though we're division rivals. But I think it's been kind of nice because the trade discussions that we always have are just like, at least what it's been recently has been like Matt's just been like, I want to compete now. And I was, just like, I really need to rebuild. And, before it was like, if you can knock me off in the process, that's so beneficial to you. And to me, it was both. It was beneficial both sides.
For sure. And actually, I think that's a great way to segue into the next topic that we wanted to talk about, which was we've got Matt Trujillo on for the first time. Actually, he's our first guest we've ever had. So we wanted to experiment a little bit with just talking about Matt. And so in that same vein that you were talking about, Cody, it was very positive that you decided not to compete this year at all because it made Trujillo's decision to compete just that much more simple. But here's actually, how do I get the view so that I can actually look at his effing team just alone? Oh God, I'm such a boomer.
If you just go to down, keep going down. I'll help you out here, buddy.
There it is. I got it. All right. So here's Trujillo's team. But first, I actually don't even want to consider looking at the screen because I just want to ask you, Trujillo, what's your history with fantasy football? Like, did you start a couple years before our Dynasty League, or were you a fantasy football junkie in redraft for years and then joined Dynasty? I mean, what's your story?
So yeah, that's an awesome question. After I moved to North Dakota and that's where I met a lot of the Delt guys that are in our league. That's actually when I first started dabbling with fantasy, but it was just on redraft. It wasn't really, Dynasty related until I worked at a restaurant with a bunch of alcoholics and drug addicts. And we had a Dynasty league that just fell apart pretty quickly, but dabbling in Dynasty, you kind of you get addicted and you just, it's such a new way of evaluating things. And I love the take. So, we started different Dynasty leagues. I joined quite a bit of them. So I'm in quite a number of Dynasty leagues right now, but I'll tell you this much, this league that we're in right now, the Midwest Dynasty League, the fact that we have power rankings, you guys have a podcast. I've never been a part of something like this before, but yeah, it's been about 8 years since I've been in Dynasty formats. So loving every second.
That's incredible. I didn't realize that you were that experienced. 8 years is a long time. I didn't even know about Dynasty until like 5 years ago. So
just something to do in the winter time, those North Dakotans, you really don't have much to do. So if I can get more invested in Dynasty, it's something to do when I can't go outside. So
yeah, it definitely is something to get addicted to, which isn't necessarily always a good thing, but it's a great way to bond with people. It's a great way to have something that you feel like you can use your analytical mind instead of just watching football for fun. You can actually have something to tie it to, the fantasy reality that is fantasy football.
Without a doubt.
No, that's really cool. I'm glad I asked because I was always kind of curious. And so let's just start from the top of your team. I'm just kind of curious. Something we do a lot is we'll go down to people's teams and maybe analyze their strengths and their weaknesses. Obviously, we've traditionally identified you as our team number 2 in our power rankings. So you don't really register as many strengths or weaknesses. But let's just start with your QB position, which in my opinion, actually, you could view as, in theory, your weakest position. But have you had any thoughts recently with the change in Superflex? What went through your mind with both starting Josh Allen and Ryan Tannehill pretty pretty religiously here.
So I have had the worst luck since we first drafted with quarterbacks. I feel like in the first 2 years that we were, we were flying, I was wheeling and dealing any damn quarterback I can get, trading for Andrew Luck the week before he announces his retirement, trading for, any given quarterback I could find. So the fact that I now have Josh Allen in the midst is such a nice quarterback to just put in there and not have to second guess. Even when he has disgusting matchups, I know he'll, be on the run. He'll definitely get me points. So the fact that I've been able to rework my team to have him is awesome. But the nightmare that I've been having has been whether or not to play Matthew Stafford or Ryan Tannehill. And as the resident Lions fan, I'm sure that you can vouch for Stafford any given week, but playing him has been a headache this season. So it has not been fun.
Yeah, he's pretty up and down, and especially going into Indianapolis this week, I would not be even considering it. But Cody, what do you think about that? I'm kind of curious on your thoughts. I mean, for this year, I don't want to talk about Dynasty. I mean, who do you like more, Tannehill or Stafford?
Oh, right now it's definitely Tannehill. I don't even think it's relatively close. Like, it kind of is, but I don't know. Tannehill just has so many weapons with A.J. Brown and Johnny Smith, and I think he's really found out kind of why he was such a top prospect back in the day. It always comes back to this, Tom. I swear to God, it always comes back to this. But fucking Adam Gase, he's just such a nightmare, and he literally destroyed Ryan Tannehill's career in Miami. And then all of a sudden, what do you know? He goes to a different team that knows how to run an offense, and he's a good quarterback. Gosh, I think Ryan Tannehill is a very solid fantasy option. And you can see the back-to-back 30-point weeks. Even against a tough Pittsburgh team, nearly got 20 last week. So I think he's a must-start, in my opinion, right now.
The amount of respect that they put on Derrick Henry's name, it just makes Ryan Tannehill that much more of a fantasy-relevant quarterback. If they're, put him in any other offense, I don't know if he would be the quarterback that he is. But the fact that Derrick Henry is just crushing it right now only helps Ryan Tannehill in the long run.
Yeah, and I completely agree that that's something I would say. I think I've said it in the past. It's kind of the play action offense, right? Like, because you can, I think historically any quarterback like Ryan Tannehill really takes advantage of the different zone reads you can provide when you're actually doing a play action, because based on how the defense jumps to go and defend against Derrick Henry, you can actually get a ton of different openings. It causes kind of a scrunch of the field towards the 8 men in the box. So you get your guys like A.J. Brown and Corey Davis and Jonnu Smith that can just be incredibly good weapons. And that team is scary in real football too. Like, holy man, what a great team. And yeah, what a great increase in value for you, Ryan Tannehill. Otherwise, you're looking at a situation where you're not too happy with Stafford as a competing team.
Not at all.
So I do want to talk about your running backs as well, because that's a hot topic of discussion for you. At the moment, you're starting J.K. Dobbins and James White, who have actually recently kind of had a surge in expected value relative to what they've had previously in this year. But you lost huge value when you lost both Eckler and Chubb. And we talked about it a couple of times on the podcast. Walk through to me, just explain to me what was going through your head when those guys went out about the same time.
There comes a point where you just start laughing and you go, okay, I feel like every season I'm having to adjust on the fly, but when both Eckler and Chubb went down, it kind of added to the difficulty level of how I'm going to make playoffs. Because right going into the season, I was like, I'm making the playoffs. That's my goal. But when they both went down, I looked at what I had, on the bench. You have Dobbins, who he's eventually going to get his time to shine, which unfortunately is not right now. Okay, I can't play him. I can't play Mark Ingram. But if you go up to my bench, my other options are Nyheim Hines, who, yeah, he had a great week one where he had like 20-something points. And is like, okay, he's going to be that Austin Eckler in their offense. Was no longer the case after week one. I can't put in Jamal Williams any given week because it's the same type of deal. So it's really, I just have backups that I'm putting in. Luckily, I was able to trade for James White, who, going into if you subtract this week, I think James White is a nice RB2 in PPR format for the most part. But with Newton, maybe that's not, this season, not a good call. But really, I'm just scraping the bottom of the barrel right now with running backs. Nobody really has any available. And looking back at our trade, Cody, I have those picks that I could really overpay and acquire a guy, but it's really deciding if I hold and just see if my wide receivers can step up or make those moves now and overpay. So it really not sure what to do.
So Cody, does Matt have to? Does he have to overpay to address the running back position, or can he just get by with his 5-2 record and wait for those guys to get healthy to compete?
I mean, I think you can wait. I guess I haven't looked at their timetable returns. I'm sure that's something you know way more than I do, Matt. I would assume playoff time, one out of the two will be healthy. Eckler will be. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe Chubb is going to be assessed to come back week 9.
Okay.
So, just around the corner there.
Okay.
Coach was interviewed, and he said that Eckler is going to be back later rather than sooner. So, I mean, when it comes to that, I'm just going to bank on him coming back playoffs for us. So,
yeah,
not coming back anytime sooner.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see then, because I think he can wait for one to come back. I think what you have to do right now, I don't want to tell you how to run your team, but what I would do is I would give it a couple more weeks, wait and see which teams are actually going to fall off from playoff contention. Like you said, right now everybody thinks that they can make playoffs. If some teams, especially in that Division 3 where you have 3-team race, if one of those teams starts, kind of falling behind, that might be a good opportunity to pick somebody up, with those draft picks. And then if you need to overtrade, you can a little bit. But unfortunately, I think for you, it's a waiting game. But you had a good enough head start that I think you're going to be just fine to weather the storm. I mean, even if you lose a couple games here, you might lose the bye, which don't get me wrong, that's a bummer. But your points for will definitely sustain you to go to playoffs. So that's my personal opinion. I think you're safe from the playoff in being a playoff team, but definitely might need to address it if you want to kind of have title aspirations the further along you go.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if title aspirations are a thing with Sam.
Yeah.
Empire-like team that he has right now. But no, I think that's fair. I mean, it's just kind of treading water until they're back, which, I mean, I think I'll be able to. But it's one of those things where each week I just want to, I want to dominate. I want to have a team that goes out there and kicks ass. So sitting waiting is easy, but that's kind of the competitor in me. I want to field the best team possible. So that's why I look at those picks. I'm like, somebody take these damn picks. So Marcus, if you're listening, you're an asshole and you need to make a trade with me today.
So it's funny because you're actually taking the place of Sam this week, and I think that if you were Sam, if this was Sam's team, he would be shopping his picks immediately, and he'd be trying to upgrade to a better running back, packaging someone like J.K. Dobbins and treat him like another first rounder. But my style is more along the lines of I want to build a dynasty, and even though Sam is quite the tyrant in our league, I do think that there is the off chance that he loses before you have to play him, especially if you have the bye, because then you're slated to just only play him in the Super Bowl, quote unquote. But B, the other option is that you just beat him, right? So, and I get that he's a tyrant. His team is amazing, but your team is in a tier of its own, in my opinion, right below Sam. So I think your approach of just like chilling is completely fine.
When my team's healthy, I really compare it. I look at Sam's and I look at mine, and it's like mine's like the meth version of Sam's team. Like everybody's like on my team, they're good, but they're just a nice step down from Sam. So they're like an island of misfit toys. They're just nobody wants to trade for them. Like nobody wants to trade for Adam Thielen. Nobody wants Cooper Kupp on their team, but they perform well on my team. So I always look at them as the meth version of Sam's.
Yeah, they're definitely I get what you're saying. It's like if you're actually competing, they're very nice players to have on your team. But like so many people, especially in a dynasty format, just think, oh, if I need to trade a draft pick, how many more years am I going to get out of these guys? Like mostly Adam Thielen, maybe a little bit of Tyler Lockett than Cooper Kupp. But, I don't know. I think they're great assets to have. But the thing is, you're close enough on a lot of these picks that say Sam just has like three players that stumble, it might be enough to overtake them. If your lineup is fully healthy, which obviously at this moment it's not.
So everything for me has to go right, and then everything for him slightly has to go wrong. So
yeah, that's my nice way of putting it.
Yeah, it is a different year for sure in that way. We haven't had a team this dominant ever, and I think I don't know, we might learn something about that this playoffs. Like, what would happen if Sam did lose? I think we'd all be going crazy. I think we'd all crack a beer together and watch Sam cry in the corner. But
yeah, there was, I guess, I'm trying to remember, but I think that first matchup after the bye, I think you said this, Tom, is just a 1 week matchup, if I recall correctly. So, I mean, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen that week. I think if he gets 2 weeks, there isn't a really good chance, which, to your point before about 2 weeks versus 1 week playoffs, it does make a difference. But, yeah, we'll see how it happens. I mean, there was a team, Tom, I think you're familiar with this. There was a guy we went to high school with that was in a redraft league. He had Adrian Peterson the year he almost got 2,000 yards rushing. He had Kelvin Johnson was his wide receiver. And then I think his quarterback was Michael Vick. He lost the championship game with those three players. And, that's nuts. So anything can happen.
Yeah, and Adam almost beat him this week. He was only 6 points short.
That was close. Oh,
yeah.
Man.
The whole league was watching with bated breath, hoping for Adam. Our baby boy that just not 3 months ago was drafting little 21-year-olds to play his football team. Almost beat Sam.
Wee little CEH. Wee little Joe Burrow.
Exactly. So let's actually talk about your wide receivers, Matt. I do agree with you. It's funny because all of them are sell at the highest value they possibly have almost. Tyler Lockett coming off a 58 fucking point game with DK Metcalf getting nothing. This guy almost had 4 touchdowns. He was targeted for a 4th touchdown. Tyler Lockett is just so hard to evaluate because you look at his stat sheet. It's mid, boom, bust, boom.
Yep.
But if you were to shop one of these 3 receivers, or one of these 5 receivers, I'm going to say, it's going to be Thielen, Lockett, Kupp, Cooper, and Odell Beckham Jr. They're all players that are in that 26 to 29 age range. They're not you can't really equate picks to them because they're solid assets that you can just keep throwing out for points. Which, if you were interested in training one of those guys, who would you shop first?
Surprise! You know what? I would have to shop OBJ first. I mean, I look at I know we were looking at Lockett just now and how you can't really depend on him, but if I'm throwing him in my flex, I'm okay with that, shot put of, is this going to show up this week or if I'm going to get 8 points. But with OBJ, how he is off the field, he's just one of those guys that I can't trust him. I don't know what's going to happen between Sunday and the next game, if he's going to mouth off or what's going to happen with OBJ. Last season, he was kind of a head case, and I was always looking at him going, wow, if I owned him, he would be pretty volatile and I wouldn't know what to do with him. But I look at my receivers. Cooper, obviously, I would not sell. When they drafted CeeDee Lamb, I was so concerned as how it's going to affect him, but it's only allowed them to really free up more targets for Amari Cooper. So I'm cool with Cooper right now. Cooper Kupp, he's one that I would probably put on the block. There's a lot of targets in LA. They do go his way, but I think they switched offensive coordinators and they really changed their scheme up a little bit, and it really put a ding on Cooper Kupp. So he's somebody that I would definitely shop. I'd keep Thielen. I can't not keep Thielen. He's just so dirty, and I know he's up there in age, but actually I'm not from Minnesota, even though I live, not that far. So I don't know his backstory. I think he start a little bit late. I know he went undrafted, right?
Yeah, he started around when he was 25. He was picked up on the practice squad through like a tryout activity. And I think he spent a couple of years kind of on special teams. And then I remember even watching him on special teams. I was like, holy shit, this guy can actually catch. Like, they should try him out at wide receiver. And then they did in the preseason, and he made sick grab after sick grab. And I was just like, get this man a starting position. Get him a starting position.
So even though he's 30, he has a little bit more fresher legs than most 30-year-old receivers would. So I don't really look at the age with him. I just look at that production, and he's just blowing it up this year like normal. So, but definitely OBJ and Cooper Kupp would be those two that I'd probably post to the trade block first.
Yeah, that's really interesting to me. I don't disagree with a single thing you said. It's you have one of the, I mean, you're up there with the best receiver core just with your depth alone. You don't have one guy that it's like the top 5 receiver, but you just have several guys that are in that top, wide receiver 1 conversation. And so that's to me, that's like, I don't know. A lot of the good teams I've noticed have solid depth at receiver because you kind of want to play matchups and you're throwing in these guys all the time. And that's definitely your team.
Mm-hmm.
So tight end, you did not have a tight end before Darren Waller. And he just like came onto the scene. Like, you had nobody. I remember you actually reached out to me for Hunter Henry as a Chargers fan. And we couldn't get a deal done. And I don't remember. I forgot what we said, but it was something like, oh, so you like draft. I think, who did you draft that year?
Well, I drafted Hawkinson. You wanted Hawkinson for Henry straight up. But again, rookie fever. And I was, I'm still high on Hawkinson. But, in the moment, I was like, that's a ridiculous move on my end. So I was like, how dare you, Tom? So I just shut that down. So, but yeah, I was waiver wire picking up any tight end that I could find that had any sort of relevance any given week. So when I was able to move Gordon for, oh man, that trade was dirty. So I traded Jake, Melvin Gordon, I think, for a first, Darren Waller and Nyheim Hines. So I really liked Gordon at the right time. And then obviously we've seen what Darren Waller can do, but he's another guy who's a little older. Is he going to be relevant for years and years? I think so. The amount of targets this guy gets is just beautiful to watch. That's another game that I always make sure to watch every week to see what Waller's going to do. And he just looks like a beast out there. And then in terms of depth, since we started the league, I've had Gesicki. Well, I dropped him and then repicked him up, but Gesicki's been there. I've been waiting for his emergence. Ever since he was drafted, I've always been reading up on him and the comparisons, and, I'm just waiting for him to explode. And he had that week too. But, we'll see how he fares with Tua. I don't know. What do you guys think with Mike Gesicki and Tua starting?
Yeah, what do you think, Codes?
Oh, boy. I think historically, new quarterbacks generally, especially ones that maybe aren't comfortable yet, generally do a lot of dump-off passes to their tight ends just because they're not willing to take chances with their wide receivers. So it's kind of that running back, that tight end drop-off. So I think he could present value. With that said, I don't know, man. We'll have to see. You're going to know a lot more about him than I do. I gotta be honest, I don't know that much about him. I've never been a huge fan of him, but I haven't done any research on him. We'll see how the target share goes. They still do have some good weapons, and I think it just all depends on how comfortable Tua gets right away. Because if he's, in my opinion, if he's actually comfortable right away, I don't know if Gesicki's value goes up a ton. But if he's not, it could, just for the drop-off passes. It actually kind of reminds me of the Darren Waller thing, too, is Derek Carr, don't get me wrong, he's had a great season, but that team is literally just dump-off pass, deep shot. Dump-off pass, deep shot. And Darren Waller is that dump-off guy because he's a monster. And they found out that that's just what works for them. So he gets all these targets for dump-off passes. No, and I don't mean dump-off as in just 1 or 2 yards. What I mean is more a mid-range. It's more of the 5 to 10-yard type passes. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't know what to think about it yet. Plus, he'll have to see if he can catch a left-hander's throw.
That is
Yeah.
true. I really thought about that.
It is interesting. Not many players have to catch. Yeah, it is different. We were talking about that before at the at a steakhouse. I think, Codes. That's how refined we are here at the Midwest Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast. Yeah. So in other words, your tight end pool has just blown itself out of the water relative to what it used to be. Just Sticky getting huge value, Waller becoming a top 3 tight end, and then Robert Tonyan. We don't have to get into him too much because we don't really know a lot about him, but he's relevant all of a sudden. I mean, he's already a top 10 tight end PPR. So you have tight ends now.
Yep. I love that little love affair between him and Rodgers. Whenever he throws a pass to Tonyan and he has that smile on his face, I just sit there hoping that that's going to continue and that that relationship grows.
And I think it will. I don't know. We'll have to see. But when Rodgers gets those little target or those people that he just loves, he just keeps going to the well. And they've always talked about Rodgers is going to use a tight end. Rodgers is going to use a tight end, and with no clear second wide receiver on that team or second target asset, I don't know. We'll see. I guess I know he had a couple duds here lately, but I also think that might have been game script.
Yeah, the only question I have with him is like, why so late? It was year 3 for him. He didn't really come onto the scene until like game 4. I mean, I guess game 3 was a pretty solid game with higher snap percentage and such. But I'm not saying that he won't turn out. I just don't know what to think, because it's like it could just be another freaking flash in the pan, like the 15 flash in the pans they've had in the last 5 years with Aaron Rodgers. After Devontae Adams, it's just been, who is this guy? And now here's Robert Tonyan. So
yeah, my 2 rebuttals to where he's been would probably be, it's his 3rd year or 3rd or 4th year, which tight ends always just generally take longer to develop. Even Hawkinson is finally starting to kind of make the ascend, and that's already been a couple of years, or I think 1 year. And then the other thing I'd bring up is they had Jimmy Graham for the last 3 years and paid him money, which I think essentially just meant he started.
Yeah, sure. And all good points. I'm excited as just a football fan to see where Tonyan might go.
Mm-hmm.
So the final question I want to ask you, Matt, is, now that we've talked about all your team, and I think that was really fun because it's kind of cool to hear you talk about your team, because we always talk about it and we're always curious. But do you believe that you're the second best team in the power rankings right now?
Right now, no. I mean, yeah, I have wide receiver depth. That's awesome. But if we're looking, and I believe you guys do your rankings on a weekly basis, I cannot say that I'm the number 2 team based strictly on my piss poor running back game right now. I mean, I would sound like an asshole if I said, yeah, I'm the second best even without Eckler. If I look at your team, Tom, I would definitely say that your team would be over mine in the power rankings, just strictly on the strength of your team that you have right now. But with James White as my RB2 and a running back committee as my RB1, I'd maybe 3rd, but definitely not number 2.
That's interesting, because I think you're crazy, but we can quickly touch on that again in the power rankings. I think that'll be a fun discussion. So with that, let's actually let's move on to just a quick matchup rundown. I don't want to go too crazy into these because we've done a lot of really awesome breakdowns so far already. And I just kind of want to go into each team really quick and then maybe highlight a player on each team. How does that sound?
Love it.
Sounds good to me.
All right. So let's start with my team, because it's the top of my list here in Sleeper. And I edged out Fowler 118 to 108. I was just watching this game, and I was all I needed was 3 points from Allen Robinson. But it was just amazing how much Nick Foles has struggled. And, man, that's a topic in itself. It's what are the Bears going to do? Are they going to go back to Trubisky at some point? Because Foles, admittedly against the Rams defense, looked like trash. But that's not really who I want to talk about, because I think the most interesting player on my team to talk about, just straight up value wise, whether it's a delta positive or delta negative, is actually Ezekiel Elliott. Or you could say, let's actually talk about Cam Newton. He had negative points this week. I identified him as someone that I thought was a surefire tight end 1. I talked QB1. I talked a bunch of trash to Cody and started a dollar bet that was like 1 to 10, like ratio of would Cam finish as a top QB1 in the next 2 years. And he started with like 25 and 37 points. And he was like, he can throw. He's a beast. But I kind of already know Cody's opinion on Cam, even though I still look forward to hearing that. But I want to start with you first, Matt. Like, what do you think about Cam Newton right now? Like, what the fuck?
He's one of those quarterbacks that's an absolute crapshoot. He's one of those where I don't know what I'm going to get from Cam any given week. You know, I thought he was going to come in this last week and light things up and, you know, show San Francisco what's up. But, I mean, he has the weapons. I know people talk shit on N'Keal Harry and the various weapons he has around him, but I love those weapons. And I think that he could do so much damage. Maybe he just needs a little more time. But I still think, I mean, next year, I wouldn't be surprised. He's only 31. I can see him being a top 10 asset. I think that dollar bet might pay off. You don't think he could be a top 10 quarterback? Back end top 10 quarterback. Don't get me wrong.
No. Let me be clear. That face I was making was, does that mean that you get to join the dollar bet with us?
Get me in on that. I'll do a dollar bet. Get out of here.
Bring it on. Keep him going.
You taking that? All right.
Yep. Hell yeah.
All right, Cody, you'll have to make a note because I can't do that right now. You should make a note in the dollar bet column.
Mental note.
Mental. Oh, actually, I can add it to my notes later. I'll remember. Anyway, that's awesome. I like it. That's your first dollar bet. Welcome to the dollar bet crew. How does it feel? So, Cody, what do you think about Cam?
Do I really need to discuss it? I hate Cam Newton. I don't like him. I mean, like, so you're right. You did get me at the beginning of the season. After the second game, I completely agree. I thought from having a 37-point week to a 25, from a 25 to a 37, I was like, wow, yeah, I guess he's back. I guess they're going to keep giving him goal line carries because he had 2 touchdowns in those games. But I think it's kind of obvious to see that those numbers were just unsustainable, and then coupled with the fact that he just isn't a good passer. He just really hasn't been a good passer at all. And I think if he can't run and he can't get those goal line carries, I don't know. I'm not saying he's awful in the sense that I think like he's a QB3. That's too far. I think he's actually probably more appropriately a mid QB2. That's where I would put him right now, in my opinion. Does he have the potential to become top 10? Not, in my opinion, not this year anymore. But maybe next year if he goes to a really good system that works with it. I don't know. I think the Patriots have an identity issue right now. I don't know what they are offensively.
Yeah, they're a football team that without Tom Brady looks lost, and especially on offense. Their defense actually is pretty solid still, but to me, it's starting to solidify the debate. You know, who was the New England Patriots? Was it Bill Belichick or was it Tom Brady? And it's starting to look like it was Tom Brady. Yeah, I'm also scared of Cam Newton's value. I do think he's a mid QB2. He's regressed in his rushing numbers, his rushing touchdown numbers, and he can't throw the freaking ball right now. So I hope Bill can turn him around, but I'm not 100% certain on that. So Ben Fowler's team, 108 points this week. Really disappointing outing from him. We have identified him as someone that we're really excited to be a playoff team, and then just like injury after losing Dak Prescott, losing Saquon Barkley, just tore him apart. So he's made some pretty critical trades to address those needs right away. But the biggest player he lost this week, Kenyon Drake. Now how can he possibly get any more shit luck than Fowler? I mean, just losing Kenyon Drake. I think that's the player to talk about this week, and really maybe not the player because Kenyon Drake will probably back. Who knows? But does Ben have to do anything with Kenyon Drake coming out, or can he just like start J.D. McKissick and Jerick McKinnon and be successful?
I'll just take this one really quick. I don't know what more you can do anymore. How worth is it to keep sacrificing your team in the long run to keep kind of chasing the dragon, right? Like, I think you just kind of got to, unfortunately, kind of bite your tongue and suck it up that, he had a couple trades that, in my opinion, value-wise, weren't very good for him. But it was with the anticipation that he was going to go somewhere with those trades this year, maybe a third-place finish or a second-place finish, which, yeah, I think that's fine. But you can't – I mean, who would you sell off? Would you going to sell off DK and try to get a running back and try to get a lower wide receiver? Is that really going to fix your problems? Maybe Aaron Jones comes back and McKinnon steps it up, and that's kind of where the production comes from. But I don't know. I truly don't know. I think with that injury, he clearly takes a step below Jake and Adam.
Yeah, so Trujillo, do you agree? Does Fowler just have to ride it out and hope he just makes the playoffs with his current team, or what does he have to do?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at both of his team and my team, we were in similar spots with running backs going down, but the difference is he doesn't have the depth. So when it comes down to it, he doesn't have the pieces that he can make those moves to replenish his running back crew. So he really has to look at, can I, somehow skirt by and make playoffs? Is Jones going to be out for an extended period of time? I haven't done any research on that, but I thought it was just a weak deal.
I think it's just that one, because I think there were reports that he could have played it, but the Packers held him out.
Yeah, Jones should be back.
So if he wants to, I mean, once he has, we're going to have Jerick McKinnon in there for a while, and maybe McKinnon comes back. Well, actually, you know what? When you look at his team, I think he can skirt by, but that depth is gone. He's going to really have to hope that the players he has playing steps up. So it's going to be tough, but I've seen miracles happen before in our league, so I would not be surprised to see if he really hangs on and skirts by into the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. I think we've talked about this every week because he's had a shit injury every effing week. It just sucks for him. I feel so bad. I do think he's currently, we were like, oh, he could 3 weeks ago, we were like, oh, he could make a trade to address it. And then 2 weeks ago, we were like, oh, yeah, he can make a trade to address it. I think now we're finally saying, nope, you got to hold, you got to pray. We're all going to pray I'm actually going to pray for him tonight as an atheist, just because I feel so. So yeah, I think we're all in agreement, and that sucks, Fowler, man. I know it's been cool that you've been getting so involved with the league and really trying to get your team there, but just bad luck overall. So
absolutely.
Yeah, so let's move on to away from that matchup. I moved to 4-3. Fowler moves to 4-3. That changes something with the records and with the playoff predictions, but we can talk about in the power rankings when we go over those. Let's talk about which. Actually, I'm gonna skip this. That's the matchup of the week. So let's go to Marcus versus Jake. And Marcus scored 178 points out of nowhere. That's a solid top 4 team kind of score. Riding off the tails of Justin Herbert. Carson only got 5 points. Jacobs only got 6. To me, though, the interesting player out of all of this that I think people are starting to maybe start to believe again is actually Carson Wentz. Oh shit! I just clicked away from him. Fuck this shit. Carson Wentz has actually been sneakily good of late. I mean, after weeks 1 and 2 with only 12 points, Carson Wentz has rebounded to 30 points in a row, and it's really making me start to think that Skonieski's quarterbacks are freaking good. With Wentz and Herbert coming out of nowhere, is there something there with Marcus's quarterbacks?
The answer to that is hell yeah. I mean, you look at how Wentz has been. Mind you, watching Wentz, him passing to a bunch of no-name people and making chicken salad out of chicken shit is a sight to be seen. It's been wonderful to see Wentz out of North Dakota. Coming in and really coming back to what we all expected out of him is really awesome. And Herbert, I mean, the amount of shit talking that happened when Herbert was drafted to the Chargers at 6th overall. I mean, you had people saying, why the hell is Herbert going there? And now people are texting me saying, okay, you got someone there. That's finally something to see. So he's been unreal. Try talking to Marcus about trading for him is like trying to speak another language. He is not having it.
I love it. I love the way you talk about, I know that you're a Chargers fan, so I know what you mean, but if you didn't know that, you're talking like Adam Schefter over here. The way the beats I'm getting, the texts I'm receiving, Herbert is the real deal.
Trujillo's our insider.
You need one for your podcast.
Absolutely.
We do. We actually used to have one of my buddies from college, Derek. He actually works at Sports Radar, who does he like literally watches games and does statistics for it as a living. So he actually used to come on our baseball podcast that Cody and I did a couple times, and he was the best glossary ever. Like we'd be like, do you know who this guy is? And like, how was he 4 years ago? And Derek would just like chime in like, oh, he actually like 4 years ago batted like 293 with 40 home runs. And we're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, he essentially, if you've ever seen the show PTI and ESPN, he was the fact check section. That would literally be like, you screwed up this, wrong, you're stupid. And we'd
From
be
his
like,
head.
Yeah, from his head. And we were just like, yes, sir, we are.
Will you do the podcast by yourself next week? No, so what? Actually, fuck Carson Wentz. You're the Chargers fan. You've watched every single game. I already know he's great. Like, that's not what I want to ask. But, like, so there's 3 quarterbacks taken in the 2020 NFL draft. Tua, Burrow number 1 overall, Herbert right after Tua at number 6. Would you change how you draft, and how would you change those 3 quarterbacks in rankings?
I wouldn't change a thing. I mean, just seeing Herbert, I always like to look at beyond the gridiron. You know, I want to see how he interacts with his teammates. And there's something about Herbert that I think just meshes well with that unit. His just being able to be just so comfortable in the pocket. He went up against some of the best quarterbacks, you know, ever. And really, he took 2 of them to overtime in New Orleans and with Kansas City. So, you know, and then he went up. So just seeing what he's been able to do, when it comes down to it, I would not be surprised if Justin Herbert was Rookie of the Year. I mean, Burrow's been playing great too, but there's something about Herbert that, as a Charger homer, I have him above Burrow just slightly. And with Tua, he hasn't played yet, so I don't know. I mean, I'm reading what they're saying about him in practice and how he's really owning that offense, and I wouldn't be shocked if he came out and just lit it up, but he hasn't played yet. So I would put Herbert, Burrow, Tua. That's just me, though. What about you guys?
Herbert, Burrow, Tua. Cody, what do you think?
For the order, I still have to have Burrow up there, just a little bit higher. I hate to do it. Burrow's offensive line, from watching him, has been trash. It's been debatably the worst offensive line I've seen in the league, which I know has led to a bunch of, you know, poor performances for him. And I just do think he still has the higher ceiling. He's shown a good ability, you know, to scramble in the pocket too and move around. Not that Herbert has, and Herbert's rushed really, really well as well. It's really not by that much I have Burrow. It's very close still. But, you know, it's really tough this week. It's like you have Herbert coming off like a 42-point week and Burrow coming off of a 35-point week. These rookie quarterbacks are just insane. The only thing that I like a little bit that you've seen a little bit out of Herbert and not so much out of Burrow, you know, they both have their issues, but it has been ball protection. Obviously, a couple fumbles there in that one game against Carolina, an interception, not great. But you look besides that, 1 interception, 1 fumble. You know, it's just one little mistake that you can hopefully correct going forward, where it's like with Burrow, I just felt like there was an extended period of time where he was having more than 1 turnover and really kind of, I don't want to say losing his team the game. He never did that, but definitely not helping. But I definitely do put Herbert above Tua. I think this game all but cements that for me. I think until I see Tua prove differently, I'm no way ready to put him above Herbert at all. So I think if you could have done a retcon, you would have had Tua above Herbert in the draft.
Yeah, it's starting to look like that, like Patrick Mahomes and Trubisky decision that was made not too long ago. Just 1 year ago, 1 calendar year ago, we were talking about Tua Tagovailoa was supposed to be the tank. Like it was tank for Tua. Now it's tank for Trevor, but it was tanked for Tua. And now I think we all agree. I mean, you're going to hear that my rankings are. I agree with Cody. I think it's still Burrow, Herbert as a close second, though. Like I could see Herbert being a second overall pick right after Burrow now, and obviously that wasn't going to happen based off team needs, but it's really fascinating to see what Tua would have to do to even get back into that conversation with these guys. Like he would have to come out and his first 5 games would have to be better than Herbert and like significantly better than Burrow because everyone had Burrow as the number 1 guy. So it's like, whoa, I don't think he gives 2 shits about that because he's just going to play his best regardless. But to me, that's the story, that his value has changed so much. So, wow. Yeah, that's Marcus's team. I agree. His quarterbacks are really, really interesting, but Herbert is his QB1 of the future by far. And it's I hope this is the continuation of Wentz rebounding. So we'll have to keep monitoring that.
One last thing about Marcus's team. The worst thing in fantasy football that I hate is when bad habits are reinforced with victories. And with him having Greg Ward and Anthony Miller in his starting lineup and still winning in a close contest, I was so pissed off. So Marcus, that I'm so upset that your negative behavior was rewarded there with the victory. So start trading for some wide receivers, man. It's dirty.
I love it. Get in the trash talking.
I think he ended up starting even worse. He ended up starting Dontrell Inman instead of Greg Ward. Even worse.
What are you doing, Marcus? So this is exactly it. You don't like to see negative habits being reinforced. Marcus,
yep.
Terrified for you. If you're going to put him – if Inman makes your lineup again, call me before the starts on Sunday. We'll work something out. I hate to see this. God.
Dude, I love it.
I love the banter.
Like, you got to pick a direction, right? Like, if I'm Marcus, like, what am I doing right now? Like, am I trying to compete? If I am, like, I got to trade my picks. If not, then, like, I should probably be trading, keeping guys like Herbert and Wentz, but trading Chris Carson.
Yes. Yes. And that seems like the perfect trade combination to me is Trujillo could definitely use Chris Carson. You give him a young asset for that he can use to rebuild this. Not even rebuild. He essentially has like a whole team, in my opinion. But I don't want to cover him too much.
No, we can move on. But I love the sharp dig from Matt there. That was very useful.
Like a PSA. He needs to know.
Maybe if we say it enough, he'll actually start listening to us. So who knows?
Oh, good point.
Jake O'Brien's team. He scored 165 points. He moves to 4-3. Solid output production from him, but again, just like another loss for a team. I don't know. I feel like I'm down on him for a different reason every week. Just immediately looking at his team, though, you got Darrell Henderson, who we've covered so much on this podcast because you just cannot trust any running back in the Los Angeles backfield. AJ Green, 13 targets again. Tyler Higbee out, but I guess let's talk about AJ. No, fuck. I don't know. I'm actually starting for the first time tonight. I don't know who to talk about because his team is just kind of like chalk. We've talked about a lot of these guys. So anyone that what do you think about Jake's team, Trujillo, actually?
His team is so damn interesting because, again, as I look to boost my team, he's definitely a trade partner that I keep looking at because his team's composed of a lot of the older guys that you would think are going to start to regress soon enough, but they keep finding ways to find that fountain of youth. We're seeing AJ Green come about and actually putting up some relevant numbers. But, I look at his team, and a guy that I was hoping you were going to bring up right now was Terry McLaurin. I mean, what that guy's able to do with the piss poor quarterback play, imagine if they had somebody worthwhile thrown his way. He is one of the most interesting dynasty studs, in my opinion, who is on my radar in all my leagues that I'm trying to get because what he's able to do, it's almost like it doesn't even matter who's throwing him the ball. He's going to put up those numbers because that guy can run routes like no other. So, I don't know. I think he's the dynasty stud in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. From having conversations with Jake, I think he's definitely – the win now mode is definitely past him. I think from his perspective, he kind of wants to rebuild, but I think he also realizes that he's probably going to make playoffs this year, or hopes he does. So I don't think he's willing to part with a lot of those older assets yet. But he's going to do his rebuild essentially all around Terry McLaurin. I think he's made that abundantly clear. I think if there ever was a do not ask about asset on his team, it is definitely Terry McLaurin. The one person I really want to highlight on his team is actually Jarvis Landry, who's on his bench. and the impact that I wonder if the OBJ injury is going to have for his, future starts. Because he steps right up into that number one spot. Now, did it help him out here? Not really. So it'll be interesting to see, does he get the OBJ targets and become kind of that bona fide number one wide receiver target share-wise that we saw in Miami when he was playing there? Or do some of these, does guys like Rashad Higgins and People Jones essentially take over that spot for the number two and just honestly keep him kind of in fantasy limbo right now?
Yeah, you guys all know. Oh, go for it. Go for it.
Watching that game, it was like watching Free Willy finally escape his little pen and make it into the ocean. Watching him play without OBJ, having to constantly focus on honing targets into somebody that's getting double coverage. When he went down and he was throwing the ball everywhere, it was a beautiful sight. So is Jarvis going to get more targets? I'm going to assume so. I mean, look at him back when he was with Miami. That guy was a target fiend. So I could see him getting a little more. But Higgins and Peoples-Jones, keep your eye out on them too, because I could see them emerging absolutely.
We don't actually have to go back too far to know what Jarvis Landry's value was. There was a world when it was Jarvis Landry as wide receiver number one for Baker Mayfield before OBJ. And he was like a fantasy wide receiver too. Just like solid guy that you plug and play. So I actually think it's very easy to predict that that's where it'll go. I think he'll probably be low-end wide receiver too, because Baker Mayfield, his rookie year, they were treating him like Joe Burrow and just giving him like 50 pass attempts a game. And now they're just completely the opposite. They just want to run the game out and have solid defense. So I would say low-end wide receiver 2 for Jarvis Landry rest of the season, which is like a huge jump up from his wide receiver 40 this year. I actually think it's to the point where he can start him over Will Fuller moving forward. Care for the stutter there.
Oh, really?
That might be a bit bold. I know he's currently wide receiver 12.
Yeah, I was going to say, that is a real bold move.
Yeah, that is
AJ Green.
Over AJ Green. That's a better. Let's say that. Yeah,
sure. Over AJ Green. I can accept that one more, but
yeah. Yeah, I do keep forgetting how good Fuller's been. It's just like hard for me to believe. Like I hate fucking Will Fuller. I don't think he's a good wide receiver, so it's just hard for me to believe that. But I do have to. I know that he's gotten better, and with Bill O'Brien out, he's even more better. With Deshaun Watson actually passing better again, so fine. I'll take.
He's just the only target there, honestly. I mean, like I get that Randall Cobb gets targets and has been having a good season, and Brandon Cooks has been okay, but Will Fuller really is just the number one target for sure.
Yeah. All right. I'll take that back. That's Obi's team. You guys know how I feel about Obi's team. I think his team's gotten worse every week, but let's talk about that in the power rankings. So let's talk about Cody and Mike for maybe like 5 seconds here.
Yep.
These are two fantasy football teams. One scored 98 points, rounded up, and one scored 116 points. We talk about the same players every single week for your team, Cody, but you did get JaMychal Hasty, and there was like 6 people that bid on him, and this dude's got freaking hair.
That's why I got him.
Yeah, I mean, does he turn into anything real? Like, do we have any? Could he ever be startable ever on your fantasy team starting next year in 2021?
If he has a starting job on San Francisco, yes, absolutely. Any player that's a starting running back on San Francisco is a must-own player. He looked good, but then again, so did Jeff Wilson. Like every running back looks great on San Francisco. So I don't want to say I don't want to read into it because I would love to, but to me it was, okay, here's a guy that if, some players get injured or, Mostert's not with them next year, or McKinnon kind of has his own little weird role. He doesn't I don't like McKinnon in that offense as far as a pure running back, maybe more of a James White type of running back. But I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I think Mostert's still in the IR. I think Wilson got injured. I think Tevin Coleman might be coming back, but we'll see. But it's interesting because Tevin Coleman's the only guy I think looks like trash as a running back on that team. I don't know why they have him or need him. So I like his potential going forward, but I totally get the skepticism.
Yeah, I assume Trujillo probably agrees for the same reason. Cody probably knows more about him than anyone now that he owns him. So there's if you're okay with this, Cody, we're gonna move on because there's just nothing else to report here.
Ooh, I want to get your guys' opinion on what Mike Reed should do with his team. So obviously, it's an underperforming team with no draft capital for. I'm pretty sure. Can you scroll down real quick so we can just double check that? I want to see if he has any draft capital for this year.
Oh, yep.
But, I mean, what route should he take? So, obviously, yeah, so he has nothing for this upcoming year. So, we're talking the soonest that he's going to be able to make moves unless he starts selling off his assets is 2022, where he just has one first-round pick. What route would you guys take if this was your team?
Oh man, we've talked about this, but it changes every week. It's just like it's so tough. I don't know. I think we've identified in the past like there's a couple key players that you have to shop immediately, and he actually did that already with one of them, but he still owns the other one, Chris Godwin. So he did shop Kenny Golladay. That was a positive trade for him in my opinion, but like he's got to get rid of Chris Godwin, in my opinion, like right now. And you could even make the argument for DJ Chark. Like they're both young players, but like if you don't have draft picks until 2022, like I don't know what you're doing. Like I guess you could hold on to Dak Prescott. I don't know. Cody, what do you think?
Yeah, this is really interesting because I was all about him having to rebuild super hard. The Dak Prescott acquisition, coupled with, the fact that he also acquired Sam Darnold, is Daniel Jones as his number 2 QB. If Jameis Winston does get a starting job in New Orleans over Drew Brees, he has some quarterback options that he can really probably trade one of those next year and turn them into a running back. He's got great wide receivers now. In my opinion, great wide receivers with Godwin. You still have Claypool and Darius Slayton who have high potential. DJ Chark has high potential. He also has the other half. He has Deontay Johnson. So he's stacked with his wide receivers right now. I can also see the argument for trading Godwin, Tom. I don't think that's a bad take at all. I actually think Deontay Johnson is going to be the number 1 wide receiver on Pittsburgh right now. From every account that I've kind of read about, I think when he's healthy, he just is a top target there. So I don't know, man. I think either hope that one of these QBs hits and you can trade him for running backs next year, and also hope that Cam Akers hopefully hits a little bit too, which I wouldn't count on. But I don't know. He has a chance to be a good team in a year or two, which I didn't think I would have even said that, honestly, like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. Definitely one of the most interesting teams in the league, I'd say.
I would say hands down the most interesting team. Like it's so hard to identify. Like his team could be like the 4th best team as soon as next year, just if all of these guys just like hit. But at the same time, you look at the team, like if you just like quick look at it and you were asked with 5 seconds and you had to identify his team, like scrolling up and down, I'd be like, this team is fucking trash. But then if you got like to write a whole dissertation and an essay on his team, you start to really think about it. You're like, shit, Cody's right. Like Daniel Jones could pop off. You could look at a situation where Deontay's number 1, Claypool's number 2. Denzel Mims hasn't even gotten a fair shake with Adam Gase at his as head coach.
Yep.
So it's like, yeah.
And he just needs Daniel Jones and Sam Darnold to be his super flex QBs because of Dak Prescott. Because Dak Prescott's a top 5 QB. I mean, if he comes back healthy and everything's going to be okay, he is, especially with that offense. So I don't know. That Dak Prescott trade, in my opinion, was a savior for him.
I don't know what he's going to do at running back, though, because I don't see – I mean, Cam Akers is the only guy that could maybe have RB2 value in the future. Other than that, he has no one at running back.
Yeah, but he has 5 good wide receiver assets. And then he potentially could have 3 good or just even decent QB assets. Say Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones are both around like number 15 or number 16 QB. You can get a running back out of that. Again, is he going to have a great team? Maybe not, just because the running backs might not be there, but will he have a competing team? I think so.
Without a doubt. Definitely a competitive team, I think.
Yeah.
Trade off one of those rookie wide receivers. Yeah, it might hurt in the moment, but you can get a good running back in return. Hell, you could probably sell Chase Claypool for his highest that he's ever going to be valuable. Sell that off for a running back. Dude, you could even compete this season. Well, maybe not now that he's 2. But, I mean, I'm just saying it's a competitive team on paper, but a few moves away from, like you were saying, one of the more competitive teams in the league.
Yeah, I hope to listen back to this podcast in a year and just kind of look at this like the Adam team, potentially. But who knows? It's definitely the most interesting. Like, to me, hands down, the most interesting team in the league. So I'm glad you asked about that, Trujillo.
Sure.
So let's move on from that matchup here to your matchup against Barber. We've already talked about your team extensively. You won this week, so you moved to 5-2. So let's just jump right into Eric's team. Or Barber's team. I don't know what he prefers, to be honest. Never talked to him. Maybe we'll have him on the podcast. Who knows? Does he know things? I don't know.
Let's find out.
Let's find out. So Eric's team actually scored close to 170 points this week. And Tom Brady has just been extremely underrated. But Trujillo, I'm actually going to turn this to you because you seem to have some nuanced opinions. Who jumps out to you on Barber's team?
Where are we going with Adams? I mean, this guy – he was gone for what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? He comes back, puts up those points, and all of a sudden, what is he ranked right now? 14th?
14, yeah.
I mean, that offense is his. That ball is going to him, and he's going to catch it. He's going to put up those points. So, obviously, when I was going up against him this week and I noticed that he had 48 points, I kind of laughed and said, okay, good job, Barber. You got this week. But he's the guy. I mean, you can't trade for him, because that guy is not going to leave his team. So you build around that guy, because Adams is just – he's looking like the shit. And, yeah, you can't touch him right now.
Yeah, and I don't think that's ever going to change either in the next, probably at least – you got at least next year and probably the next year after that. And then, maybe he falls off, because that's when Rodgers starts to get up in age, really to a critical point, and actually Adams himself. So, yeah, he's got at least 3 years or 2.5 from this point that he's just solid. So that's an interesting play to point out for sure. Cody, do you agree with that? Or is there somewhere else on Barber's team that you think is more interesting?
I don't actually – well, I think there's plenty of interesting people on his team. But to kind of stay in that same limelight, I actually think Davante Adams is who you trade right now for Barber. I mean, not to overanalyze his team really quick, but I just don't know what his identity is. He doesn't trade He doesn't trade in general, but he has all of his draft picks still intact for next year and the year after, which I don't know if that's just from an enjoyment perspective of he just really enjoys having a draft pick every year, but he's got wide receiver talent, but his quarterbacks are honestly not good. Like, they're going to fall off. Like, Tom Brady could retire next year. What's he going to do then? And start Jimmy Garoppolo and have Tyrod Taylor as your backup? Like, I have a tough time seeing where his team is headed. And I think you can build around Deebo Samuel and CeeDee Lamb. Perfect guys. But, if you need to try to trade wide receivers, especially to get running back help, which he doesn't have running backs, it's like, get rid of some of these guys. Get rid of your Tyler Boyds, your Davante Adams. Sell Davante Adams when he's still so high. He's starting to have injuries consistently every single year. So, and I think a lot of people aren't fully reading into that, which is totally fair because he's still Rodgers' number one target. But I don't know. You can't sell him the second to last year or the last year of his he's still going to be great phase, because people are just going to be so low on him. He's 27, still appeals to potential trade partners. I think it's a good time to move him, personally.
That's interesting. It kind of opens a can of conversation, because I actually think one of the biggest things we identify a lot when we talk is you got to pick a direction. What is your identity? And you said that, Cody, straight up, he doesn't really have an identity. So I think you could make the argument there's a lot of players like that. Like Tom Brady, you should have traded him yesterday. Kareem Hunt, this is the highest value he's going to have, in my opinion. So you should trade him So I guess like Trujillo, do you agree? Like, are we just saying like so I'm gonna say Tom Brady, Kareem Hunt, Devontae Adams, and then maybe hold the rest of these guys, but like should he just and then Marvin Jones, even if he has any value, like should he trade them out, or do you just disagree with Cody on all this?
I'm gonna take the opposite approach, just for fun, just for
Absolutely.
shits and giggles. He is in the most difficult division to really stand out in. I mean, he's going up against Tom, you, and Sam's team, which are just lights out. So he has these aging players, but we were just looking at his draft capital. He has 2 firsts over the next 2 years. He has 2 seconds. You could expect them to be, if nothing changes, middle of the pack picks. So if he really wanted to, he could say, you know what, this year I'll try to get in on points. He's putting up pretty damn good points right now since he has Adams and Hunt really showing up, and Brady's showing us that he doesn't age. But, if he really wanted to, he can make some pretty impactful moves for his team right now. And then he could skirt by in points. So, I mean, like you guys are saying, though, when it comes to identity, there aren't many transactions that, go on his team. He has his team, and that's what it is. And it's the pick. So, I mean, if all of a sudden he came out and said, all right, boys, I'm going to start making some trades, make some moves, I could see his team being someone to actually be fearful of, because it's pretty deep. I mean, well, it's deep in the receiving game. But running back, he really lucked out with Devonta Freeman. I mean, I've been pretty impressed with that lately. I've not been expecting much, and every time I see him get 10-plus points, I say, okay, we got more out of him than we were expecting. But, yeah, I don't know. I could see him going both routes, selling or buying. I mean, that division just sucks for teams like his and Laramie's, where it's like, what do you do? Has to be switched to a different division? I don't know.
Right. I mean, I just don't think neither of those options are just sit because I don't think he's going to make playoffs by just doing nothing. Like he could, but he could also just like do something and like at least get even closer to being a playoff team. Or he could just do something and like commit to the rebuild next year. Like he's got to do something. Like let's see something out of Barber for once. That's what I say. That's my trash talk. Like Barber, get your head in the fucking game. Like let's get in this league, bro. So, so yeah, I think both sides are completely true. I think to settle that argument, you just have to do something. So do something. Yep. We'll see. Let's move on to Matt and Laramie's matchup here. Mags, our co-commissioner who stood us up, we actually, after we chatted you, Trujillo, we wanted to see like, he wasn't, you were our first pick, and then you didn't respond. So we're like, hey, Mags, do you want to join the podcast this week? And then he's like, no, I got to do more work, but I bet you guys are going to be idiots anyway. No, anyway.
Well, is that exactly how it went?
Yeah. It is. So he scored 139 points this week. He's got some. I think we on this podcast genuinely really like Matt's team and really like what he's done with it. And he's got some solid hits out of James Robinson and Stephon Diggs, just having a ballooning of a year with Josh Allen thrown to him. Mike Evans, pretty solid downturn though. I actually kind of want to highlight him. Let's talk about him because we haven't talked about it all yet on this podcast this week. That Antonio Brown just got signed by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So they now have a solid third receiving option in addition to Scotty Miller. Like right now, Mike Evans is wide receiver number 21. He's typically been a perennial top 10 wide receiver. Are you concerned about Mike Evans?
Not one bit. I mean, he's going to bounce back. He's one of the most consistent receivers in the game. I would be surprised if by the end of the year his stats don't line up to what he normally gets in, any given year out of him. So Antonio Brown coming in, I'm not expecting that to really affect Evans that much. If anything, it'll benefit him. Look at it. I'm trying to look at it through the lens of how it helped Amari Cooper with them getting CeeDee Lamb. So I don't know, maybe it helps Evans in the long run, but he's too consistent to be worried about.
Yeah, Cody, you agree?
Here's actually, so it's interesting you bring that up. Antonio Brown is not the reason I'm nervous for Mike Evans. It's actually the new emergence of Rob Gronkowski being back, becoming honestly another relevant fantasy option now. I mean, he had 18 points the last game and 16 after that. He's seen 8 targets the last 2 games for Rob Gronkowski, and whereas Evans has only seen 2. Is this where Tom Brady kind of gets back to just being typical Tom Brady and using his tight ends? And then it seems like the wide receiver has been Chris Godwin lately. So while I don't think he's going to be a complete bust and he's going to fall off and any of that, I think honestly, a mid wide receiver 2 might be more of a suitable place for him right now, currently. I think Rob Gronkowski is going to keep getting those targets. He's looked a lot better over the last 2 games, and I'll be the first one to kind of admit I was wrong. I didn't think he had a chance in hell to have anywhere near a decent fantasy season after I saw the first couple weeks. So it's been really impressive.
Week 3, I asked if we could drop Rob Gronkowski, and we actually all kind of agreed that you could.
Yeah.
I'm somewhere in the middle, but keep in mind Leonard Fournette is also back, and he's a receiving running back generally. So he's also taking a bit of a target share, and there's just so many mouths to feed. And like, as much as I love Tom Brady, like, he is not a mouth feeding quarterback necessarily. Like, he's a solid quarterback, but he's never been known for his ability to just like give everyone the highest fantasy value ever. So I don't know. Like, I'm somewhere in the middle. I actually am like concerned about Mike Evans in the sense that I don't know if he's ever going to be a top 10 receiver ever again, because I think he's probably got long-term staying power in Tampa Bay. I think Tom Brady is going to play again next year unless they win a Super Bowl. Like, I think this is like, I think Mike Evans is a sell in Dynasty, like right now. If you're someone that's buying him saying, oh no, he's going to be back to top 10 again.
Yeah, could be. I don't think I have that strong of an opinion where I don't think he'll never be a top 10. I think within the next 3 years he would be a top 10 thing. I would make a dollar bet with you, but I really don't want to wait 3 years for us to decide this.
Yeah, I could be way off base, but that's who I wanted to identify, unless you guys had anyone else to talk about on Matt's team.
No, not really. I think it's a good person to cover.
Perfect. Yeah, Matt's team is awesome. And Laramie's team, he's the guy. He's our one guy that's like outside looking in, needs to do something if he wants to compete, or he can just like chill and just not compete. And every single week he like, maybe this is just, I love Laramie, but David Montgomery, Joe Mixon, and Miles Sanders, like, he way overvalues, and like I think that he would Laramie is someone that could really take advantage. Like, he could really do well if he just appropriately valued his players and knew when to trade them and knew when to evaluate them. Like, am I right or am I wrong, Trujillo?
No, you hit it on the head. I mean, yeah, absolutely. He's same thing with Marcus this week, reinforcing bad habits, putting in wide receivers that should not be getting you the victory, yet walking away with the win. So awesome win, Laramie, but at the same time, you have the running back pieces. You know you need a wide receiver. You're in the most difficult division there is. Just bite your lip, make the trade. You've been hanging them onto them for too long. And the thing is, if you hang on to them, and like Sanders going down, didn't Mixon get hurt too? So, I mean, now if you do have to make those moves, you're now selling them at the lowest value that they have of the season. So you really got to look at, when is the right time to get rid of them? Do I get rid of them when they're most valuable, or now they're hurt, now I'm going to have to actually take less? So it's tricky.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I thought he should have traded one of those guys for a receiver like yesteryear, but he just has never gotten to it. What do you think, Codes? Do you agree?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, speaking of over-evaluations, I remember talking to him about Michael Gallup even last year, and it was like, where do you have Michael Gallup? And I'm pretty sure he kept saying like a high wide receiver 2 or low wide receiver 1. He's like, I think he has that much potential. And it's like, hey, Laramie, you're my boy. I supported you last week, but I'm going to come a little bit hard on you right now. He's not that. He's barely going to be a wide receiver 3, honestly, after this season, just because of the fact that CeeDee Lamb is in this offense. Yes, I get it. He had a 30-point week. Cool. I don't care. He had one good week. The rest has been shit. He does have talent. I agree he has talent. But as long as he's in Dallas, nothing's going to come of that. And honestly, if he goes anywhere else, do I think he has talent to be a standalone wide receiver number one? Nope, I don't. So he needs wide receiver help so desperately. Robbie Anderson has been, in my opinion, just a lucky-ass godsend for him for how well he's done. Do I think Robbie Anderson's going to sustain that? No, I still don't. Maybe he thinks he will. Maybe, since he's number 7 wide receiver, maybe Laramie thinks he's a high wide receiver 1 right now. But he's not. He's still a wide receiver 2. He always will be. I don't know. Maybe I'm just going off a little bit too much, but you got to trade somebody. Or you just rebuild. They're again, can't pick the middle.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, I don't think you went overboard at all. Like, Laramie could really – I think he could use some – I don't know where he gets his rankings from. I don't know, like, does he just, like, sit and, like, post pictures of, like, Robbie Anderson's meth head-looking face and jack off to him while he calls him wide receiver 1? Or does he watch David Montgomery look like the next Jordan Howard and think he's a running back 1? Like, does he think that – like Miles Sanders is somehow a top 5 running back when he hasn't shown consistent ability to even carry like a main workload of a running back? Like those are just all my thoughts of Laramie's team. And it's like, if he just had more realistic viewpoints, I think he could actually turn his team that has a lot of like net value into something that could be competitive or rebuilding. Like,
it's got a lot of damn talent. It's got a lot of really good pieces. It's just, he needs to make the puzzle.
And until you jerk off to Robbie Anderson's meth head hair, don't knock it until you try it. That's all I'm going to say. But, I mean, even if you wanted to do a quick trade, he has the tight end depth that any of us could only dream of. Trade Noah Fant. You guys talk about Gronk. Trade Gronk, aging wide receiver out of it. There's some things you can do.
Could not agree more. That's great analysis.
And it's funny because it's a different problem than Barber, because like Laramie does reach out for trades, but he just doesn't ever make them because he thinks his team is Sam's.
The valuation is never there.
Yeah.
Right.
He does send the offers. You got to give him that. But the valuations always make me scratch my head going, wait a minute.
Yeah. Do you want 4/4, 3/3 for Juju Smith-Schuster? No.
Yeah, it's the Mike Reed technique. Oh gosh.
So yeah. Anyway, we love you, Laramie. You are our boy, and we love that you listen to our podcast regularly. So hopefully you have some rebuttal to what we just
Thanks
said.
for beating Mags. Cheers.
Yeah. Good news for you, for sure, Matt. So let's talk about the matchup of the week. And I know we've dragged on, but it's all been worth it. It's been good conversation tonight. So Sam unfortunately gets his 7th in a row victory to start the season. I was really pulling for Adam. It's to the point where like I kind of am treating Sam's team like Cody's team. Like I don't even want to talk about anyone. Maybe let's just talk about Travis Fulgham really quick. Is he real? Like, is Sam picked him up? Sam's pretty good at evaluating players. And does Travis Fulgham have long-term value? Like I know he's going to probably have value for the rest of the season while they're still in flux. But do you believe in Travis Fulgham as a dynasty asset?
No, not at all.
I'd equate it to Tyrell Williams of the Chargers fame. I would just say here's an undrafted guy that just is going to be called up, has a great season. I don't think he has lasting value, but hey, he's probably going to be awesome the rest of this season.
Yeah. Continuous injuries of whom I think Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun Jackson, I guess kind of was back, but he's old. There's just nobody in that offense that even like warrants it. JJ Arcega-Whiteside, who they thought was going to be number 1, just fell apart. I mean, Greg Ward's even putting up decent stats right now. Like, I mean, Carson Wentz, their team's bad. They need to throw the football. Somebody has to get targets. Now with Zach Ertz being out too, it's all a compounding effect on him that, maybe Sam will trade him off high this year if somebody believes in him, but I hope that doesn't happen. But we'll see.
I do think he looks good. Like, I actually do think he looks like a guy that can handle a wide receiver one, like low. Like, I think that you can be someone that's capable of handling. Like, they're two different skills. You can be a wide receiver one talent that can't handle being wide receiver one, but you can also just be like a guy that's pretty good, but is able to like have the confidence of being that wide receiver one, and that's what Travis Fulgham has. So, like, I think there's a chance. Like, I think he's a great pickup. I think that's what I'll say. He's worth owning for sure. Like,
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I guess I shouldn't say that I think he's going to disappear, but I think this is so clearly I don't see him getting over 10 targets a game, like going for the rest of his career. It's outrageous right now.
yeah,
Well,
that's
you're
why.
going up against Dallas. He'll get 10 targets next
Yeah,
week.
he will. The rest of the season, I am very high on him. I want to make
Yeah.
I want to make that very clear. Rest of the season, yeah, sure, A+. But Dynasty, no.
Yeah, maybe he should trade him to Laramie's team, so who needs wide receivers desperately. All right, and then we have Adamy's team, who is right after the other team we were talking about earlier, who is the most interesting team by far. I think Adam's team is the second most interesting team. Like, what a blowout from all his players. Like, Kyler Murray doing the next step up that he needed to do this year. I mean, David Johnson a little bit down, but just to keep going with my enthusiasm, CEH, like, crazy rookie for this year. Calvin Ridley, like, showing that he is unbelievable with Julio Jones still in the mix. Like, I don't know. What do we think about Adam's team? Like, is there a specific, like, surprise that you think about him, or, like, what do we think?
At least for me, it's the fact that both of his rookie running backs appear to be a hit. I think between Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's almost an RB1 right now, and DeAndre Swift, I just thought that maybe one wouldn't really be a hit, or wouldn't get the start, or wouldn't get the playing time. And at first that was looking like DeAndre Swift, but you remained patient and waited, and it worked out. He's going to also just have an insane QB combo. I mean, once Tua gets called up here, he already traded away Sam Darnold in order to help out some assets. Derek Carr is having an actually quiet, good season. I mean, I guess maybe not as good in fantasy now that I look at it, but still like something somebody might value as a low QB2, throwing touchdowns and getting yards. So we'll have to see. I love Adam's team though right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, do you love his team as much as we do, Matt?
I do. I mean, yesteryear I owned Calvin Ridley and DJ Moore before he did. Little hand me down over to Adam.
How generous.
Yeah, but yeah, his team's beautiful. I mean, like you took the words out of my mouth. I was going to talk about how his quarterbacks, he doesn't have to worry about them for a decade. I mean, that's an awesome problem to have. Even depth-wise, he has pieces on his bench that you just look at and you go, that's sexy. You know, you got Mecole Hardman. Let's see who else he has. Mike Williams. He has Mike Williams. Like, I mean, he just has pieces on his team that he's not going to have to worry about. Now, trade-wise, he's in another competitive league, division, where I see him pretty easily taking that division. I mean, maybe that's controversial, but
Not with us.
Good.
Not
Okay.
It
with
was
us,
Sam.
no.
Yeah, he has nothing to worry about making the playoffs, but if he wants extra pieces, he has the pieces to make some trades so that when it comes time to the playoffs, he can have some extra looks. But it's a damn sexy team.
It is, and even N'Keal Harry just has more like young depth, and he just picked up Lev Bell. So, like, if he ever needed to start him over David Johnson, like if Lev Bell started actually being like in the playoffs, I could see him maybe having higher value, like as a handcuff even to CEH. I know that was part of the reason he wanted to pick him up. So it's like, yeah, dude, Adam's team just like came to fruition. He's my favorite team to watch. Like, he's the one team that I'll sometimes just like look at his score to see how his team does, because it's like so many fun players to watch. Like, kudos to him. Kudos to him doing a rebuild. That's awesome. So with that is the matchups that was supposed to be quick, but it was just such hard hitting analysis. I'm really glad. I think we had some awesome conversations about it. So let's actually move to the final piece of this podcast, which is where we get to give you guys all of our opinions on what the power rankings currently are. So I'm going to start with a Control X and a Control. Oh shit! How do you actually do? Christ.
Nice.
Oh, there's a problem. Well, anyway, let's start from the bottom while I figure this out. We agree.
You trying to clear it?
No, I'm trying to insert one left so that whatever, fuck it. Let's just move them around if we need to move them around. So
Okay.
Starting from the bottom, we still agree that it's Cody and Mike bottom two, right? Nothing to change there.
Nope, not on my end.
Yeah.
All right. Marcus and Barber, do we agree? I mean, is that still 9-10, or is there a flip happening here, or is Barber still better than Marcus?
I still think Barber's better than Marcus right now. Actually, with the QB help, I actually would flip that around. I think I would put Marcus over Barber.
Yeah, I was going to say the pieces that Marcus has on his squad, I would flip that pretty easily.
I actually agree with you. We actually kind of already hit on this a little bit when we were looking at the teams. Like, I do think, yeah, Marcus's team is slowly to that point where, like, I think still in tier 5, where it's like tier 5 where we've identified as like not the competitive playoff team place, but I don't know, his team has got some arrows up and could be an interesting team moving forward. So now we move into tier 4, who's Laramie all by himself. Do we still agree with that he's all by himself, or do we move anyone up in there?
I think he's still by himself for right now. I actually do see Ben Fowler falling into his tier in the coming weeks, but as of right now, he's on his own for me.
Interesting.
Fair. With the running back injuries that Ben had, I think falling down to a tier 4, keeping Ben where he's at, but making that tier 4 instead of tier 3, I think would be pretty valid.
Yeah, I don't even know if you do it this week. I don't know if I can do it this week yet, just because it's still 4-3 for everybody in that division. And say he does turn it around somehow. Yeah, 3.5 is perfect. He will literally go either stay in tier 3 and stay competitive, or he's going to drop down and go into that tier 4 category.
I agree, and I don't think we can predict that, because it's just going to be like, will one of his players step up from his bench or from like his current starting position, or will he just not have any way to fill that running back position? Yeah, so I think 3.5 is about where he sits. Then we've got the huge tier 3, which this week we might be looking into doing some rearranging. And this is my favorite topic, even though we're like an hour and a half and exhausted in this podcast. I want to be bold, and I want to move Adam at number 3 in the power rankings. Is that a hot take, or is there any legitimate argument to that? Let's start with Cody.
It's funny because I was just thinking the same thing, honestly. I truly think with so you're saying you could put him in tier 2 if he goes off record first, which he maybe would be able to pass.
No, I want to clarify. I would still keep him in tier 3.
Okay. Oh, yeah. But put him at the top for tier 3?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm totally comfortable with that.
Trujillo, do you agree? Like, is he above me? Or I think you kind of thought maybe I'm still above him, but like, this is great. Like, it's a weird argument.
Even when you break it down to points, he's beaten you in points. I would say that he's beating you in points at this moment, not over the course of the season. I still don't think that'll happen. But yeah, you know what? His team is finally with Swift emerging. We're going to be having Tua here. I think I would put him above you very cautiously. I don't feel confident about it. When you mentioned it, I kind of squirmed a little bit, putting him above your team. I definitely wanted him above Mags's, but yeah, I think it's bold, but I think it makes sense. I would not put yours 5. Definitely, I would put that above Mags.
Okay, so we agree that so Adam's team, I personally just think based on how hot it is, after we were watching the game, he almost beat Sam, the best team we've ever seen in our league. He almost beat him in a single week, which is like saying a lot. I think that to me makes him number 3. I think that's so cool for the league. But yeah, I think I do agree. Cody, is there an argument to make Mags above me, or he took a step down again this week too? So I think he kind of got to rearrange it to me being 4, though. You agree?
Yeah, I think you still have to. I think it's going to be close because he did have some crucial buys this last week. Like he had Jonathan Taylor on a buy, which is a big, running back asset. And he honestly just had a couple misses. Justin Jefferson was also on a buy, which is a huge asset for his team. I'm not willing to put him above you yet. I think you guys are incredibly close, though. I think it's literally
happen.
It could not. Yeah, at any week could he pass you? In my opinion, it literally just comes down to some performance. And as we get closer to playoffs, it just comes down to points. Like currently, you're about 30 points ahead of him, so I'm going to leave you on top there.
Yeah, I think it's really for me like what happens with my wide. I guess let's just look at this really quick. Like between our teams, like to me, it's about like can Zeke stay RB1, number one?
Yep.
Can Ronald Jones keep up his value? He was insane with Fournette out, but like, can I? The fact that I have Fournette and Jones, like, do I start? Do one of those guys clearly shake out? That's the next question for me. And then the final question is like, can T. Higgins step up to be really that like solid flex option, or do I have to start reaching down to like starting Fournette and Jones? Like, I don't know. I've got my team's starting to have weird questions about it. Like Cam Newton, am I starting Ben Roethlisberger consistently over Cam Newton moving forward? I think most would say like my team is just, it's weird. I don't know.
It is. I think that's a very valid question. I mean, I think Big Ben he's been, I guess he hasn't been as good. Again, he hasn't been as good as I thought he was either. He seems like these have been teams like Ben Roethlisberger and Derek Carr that their teams are having good season and you're seeing really good play out of them, but it's not always translating into fantasy, points, especially since they're not runners.
Right. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I still really like my team, but they're not like my team is not solid every single week. I'm there like I thought it was at the beginning of the season.
Yep, I agree.
So, all right. So we're going to keep it. This is all, I think we all agree with this. These two things are the only thing we kind of moved in. I think we still, nothing to talk about Jake's team. Like he could move. I think there's potential, I guess, that he could move into like the tier 3.5 with Fowler, which at that point we might as well just create a new tier. Just because
I think there could be, but I'm not willing to put him there now. I think he still actually does have contention with Adam for that spot. I mean, even coming off a huge week for Adam, I think Jarvis Landry's value could go up. If we learn the issue for Baker literally was OBJ, Baker's value goes up, and he has two great starting QBs. To me, he seems like a person that easily is still within tier 3.
You agree, Matt?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's funny. Jake's team, you're always waiting for his team to regress. Just the nature of the players he has on his team. You're just waiting. And I feel like I've been waiting for his team to regress for 2 years now. But he's been hanging on. He's a consistently competitive team in the division. And like you were saying, it'll be interesting to see how Baker Mayfield plays out with no OBJ. I think we all expect Mayfield to kind of step up a little more. But, it's just I feel like Jake's team is going to be in an interesting tier for a little while. Whether that's shaky or if it's going to be consistent, but we'll see.
Yeah. So we agree on that. Pretty holistic. I actually see a lot of similarities between Jake's team and my team, just like good teams with a lot of questions still, which is pretty uncommon. Then we move into tier 2. You're all alone, Trujillo. We've had you all alone for a couple weeks now. Like you're not as good as Sam's team, but you're like clearly better than everyone else. Like, and I think earlier you were trying to say that you don't agree with that because you were trying to put me over you. But have we turned your tides in the last hour or so?
You guys are pretty convincing. At the start of the year, I did have your team above mine because, maybe I was hyped up on Newton and, I just think Jackson's going to put you automatically in the top 3 just having him there. But I don't know what's been going on with your team. It's just I feel like your team's finding weird ways to lose or not perform optimal. So you have you talk about my wide receiver depth. You have some of the most interesting wide receiver depth in our league, hands down, in my opinion. But, I just feel like your team belongs in the tier 2, but it's just not performing at the tier 2 level. So it feels weird being considered tier 2 just based on not having any running backs, but I guess, I'll take it.
Yeah. And remember, this is important to discuss that like these power rankings are based off of who has the best chance to make the playoffs. And then the next question we always ask is, okay, if we know they're gonna make the playoffs, like basically this tier up, what's their best chance of making the championship. So we're saying that you have the best chance to make the playoffs because you're 5-2, and then because those running backs are going to be healthy for the playoffs, that's why I think Cody and I personally put you in that tier 2 alone.
There you go. Then I belong there. Yeah.
Yeah. A great way to think about it is just where do we think you're going to end up at the end of the season? I think you have a good chance of getting a bye. I think getting a bye is crucial in power rankings. That's where I'm going to put you there in your own little tier.
Yep.
Then I'll take it. Thanks, guys.
And,
yeah. And then we got Sammy Betland at number 1. And honestly, I'm starting to wonder if this is what our permanent repertoire is, the three of us, because Sam, we don't really care about his opinion because his team is the best and he's kind of cocky about it. No, I'm just kidding. He doesn't ever actually talk about it. Sam is great. He's number 1 clearly, but it was a real pleasure to trade out Sam as the number 1 team for Trujillo this week to talk with us about fantasy football.
Yeah, it was.
My pleasure, guys. You need to win again, let me know.
Yeah, we will. We actually will if someone ever has to miss again. But I do want to ask is like a parting question, Trujillo. What do you think about the league as a whole? Like we've always, Cody and I and Sam always talk about like where do we think we're at? Like what are your thoughts about in year 3 of this Dynasty league? Like I know you kind of alluded to it earlier on, but like where are you at with us?
Just in terms of what the league dynamic?
Yeah, the dynamic, how we talk, like what the health of it is. Like, are you having a good time?
Yeah, like I was saying, just the little things that we're doing in this league, the quarter season rankings that Mags puts together, whoever puts that together, the podcast. The only thing that I would love to see more is just banter during the matchups on Sunday. I have other leagues where we always talk shit on games, but in ours we're pretty quiet. So it'd be cool to see that. But like I was saying, I've never been a part of a league like this in terms of just the little added benefits that we do just to kind of keep it interesting and make it feel like more than a league. So it's been pretty awesome getting to know everybody too.
I agree. I think Matt and all you guys, actually all you co-commissioners, have done an awesome job of keeping this league really fun and like being super responsive to league changes, like with COVID especially. Holy crap, you guys have all done such a great job. Especially shout out to Matt. Like he's an awesome main commissioner.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I love this league. I think it is kind of fun to just get to know these random ass cronies. Like I'm pretty sure I like straight up hated Laramie before this. And now Laramie's because I always he had the weirdest values. Just like, this guy sucks. He just doesn't. I don't even know what his player value is. But now I think all you guys are super cool, and I look forward to hanging out with you guys more in the future too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and PSA to Laramie and Marcus. I know that we were talking about your teams and what you need to do, but just know that if you need a wide receiver, you have a place with me. So actually respond to my text messages and let's make things happen, baby.
I love it. I love the parting sentiment. You may never say another word on our podcast, but it's good. It's good to have a parting sentiment.
Parting one then.
Yeah.
You'll have more to say if we have anything to say about our own podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Cody, any parting thoughts?
No, I think Matt actually summarized it really well. I think it's going to be interesting to see as we go forward. Can't believe Division 3 still has 3 people tied for records in that. This is going to be a wild ride. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, it sure will be. And thanks again, Matt Trujillo, for joining the Midwest Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast. We look forward to talking to you guys again next week with maybe Sam back, maybe someone else will be back. But thanks again for listening to the podcast, and we look forward to seeing you guys on the football field.
It's the Football Podcast with Tom, Cody, and Sam.